This is Brad Philpot, a professional, international racing license holding racing driver. Seriously, scrolling through this guy's career page to talk about his notable victories feels like the text crawl at the beginning of a Star Wars movie. And this is South Coast Karting, a newly refurbished karting track in the south of England, where Mr. Philpot decided to host a race day with his YouTube channel members and various other motorsport content creators. To put this into perspective, Philpot's audience consists of some pretty seriously dedicated motorsport individuals, including, but not limited to, numerous owner kart drivers, the fella who tests the karts for Club 100, the guys running the Missed Apex podcast, Callum Races, who previously worked for the YouTube channel Overdrive, former British Indoor Karting Championship champion Johnny Elliott, and also Philpot himself will be competing. And right in the middle of all this is me, bin man by day, rental warrior by weekend, whose only racing achievement even close to legitimate is a P3 finish in the Three Sisters 120 Endurance Championship. Welcome to Perico Karting, and in this video, an amateur idiot goes toe-to-toe with a professional racing driver. Oh boy. Now, this isn't completely hopeless from the get-go, because I have two advantages up my sleeve. One, the karts here are GX200 Biz karts, the same model that petrol team sport tracks use, and I am deeply familiar with these things. They're brand new too, so almost all of them drive like an absolute dream. The other advantage, and probably my biggest one, is the fact that even though I stand at a paltry 5'10", my bones are apparently made of helium, with me weighing in at 65 kilograms while fully kitted up.
Wrong. I'm 95% helium.
Fortunately, I wasn't lost in the deep end by myself because I'm joined here today by a familiar face, that being Karting with Josh, who was also invited along. The event format is as follows. Everyone is split into three groups for qualifying, namely groups A, B, and C. After that, there will be Group A, B, and C pre-final races, which determine who makes it to the Group A and Group B final categories. Whoever qualifies the fastest is pole for Group A, and you can kind of get the picture from there. The winner of the Group A final takes the win for the entire event. The pressure was on immediately because I was in Group A for qualifying, which happened to contain Callum Races, Alex Van Geen, and of course, Brad Philpot himself. So, with some latex gloves on under these stupid motorcycle gloves, yes, I promise I'll get rid of these soon, I got into my kart and I took to the track. Here goes nothing. And so begins the first flying lap under green flags, because the first one took place under yellows, and that was just me kind of getting to grips with the track. Now, before I got here, I did actually watch a hot lap, because fortunately this track has been open for a couple of weeks, and there was at least one person who had uploaded a lap. At the moment, I can tell that this track is kind of windy, definitely a double hairpin right at the beginning, which I'm kind of fond of, although I don't like it when tracks have too many hairpins, which, to be fair, this track does kind of suffer from. It does have a really good winding section at the back where you can really pick up some speed. However, this track is notably narrow, and on my outlap, I immediately figured out that there are two optimal overtaking spots. The first one is at the third corner, the setup being in this corner right here, where I immediately find the inside line on the fella in the white suit over there, and manage to wrap it around the apex to make an overtake happen. The second overtaking spot is another hairpin, which happens to be on the other side of the track. The setup for this hairpin being the big winding straight at the back. Now, if you look ahead of me, you'll notice that Kart 4 has just clipped a cone, and this is a perfect time to explain what those cones actually mean. They're dotted around the apexes of most of the corners and on the outside of the big winding section at the back, and what happens is, if you clip one of those cones, accidentally or otherwise, you get an immediate 5-second time penalty. So, I need to make sure I don't hit any of those cones, and if I play my defensive cards right, I can even use those to my advantage. Or at least the threat of them. A couple of laps have gone by now, with my personal best being well into the mid-39s, and this up ahead of me is Spanners of the Missed Apex podcast. He goes nice and wide to the outside of this corner here, and I think he just effectively lets me through, and apparently the karts ahead of me have absolutely obliterated those cones, which means their lap times are going to be invalidated because we're still in qualifying and a 5-second penalty doesn't make much sense here. Now, one thing I'm noticing is I am gaining on these people quite quickly. And I'm not sure if that's because I'm experienced in the specific model of kart, or if I weigh roughly the same as the screws holding them together. But either way, I'm gaining on these three, and now I have the gargantuan task of overtaking these people on a track about as wide as a drinking straw. This should be fun. Tailing this individual, who I believe is called Pope, down the back winding straight, I decide to cut to the inside to maybe try and apply some pressure and see if I can get a move done, narrowly avoiding the cones on the apex of that corner, but unfortunately Pope gets a better run. However, I manage to look to the inside for the main straight, but he sort of weaves across, which means I have to brake as a reactionary. However, I believe I'm going to set up a move through this second corner here, because whoever's in front of Pope is in fact slowing him down, so I can get a move done through this apex right here, which means I have successfully identified a key overtaking point on the track, something I will have to use to my advantage. I attempt to overtake Callum Races on the outside here, which doesn't seem to work for me. Fortunately, there's no cones on that specific curb, so I didn't incur any penalties, but I go for an incredibly late move here for some reason, accidentally spinning him out and almost myself directly into the apex, and then letting Pope back through. That wasn't my smartest move, but it means that the margin for error in that corner is exceptionally small, which means I've identified another key defensive position. So not all of my mistakes are going to detriment me, some of them are learning opportunities. By the way, for the hawk-eyed viewers who noticed that my last lap time on that lap was null, that's because that was the point where the practice session crossed over into actual qualifying, and that lap basically didn't appear on the results. Cheers! It didn't take me long to catch back up to the back of Callum Races here, and as we go through these final sequences of corners towards the main straight, if you keep your eye on the left side, you'll notice the marshal holding up a contact board. That was for me, for the incident the lap before, but I need to get past Callum right here, so I immediately cut to the inside of this corner right here, identifying yet another way to overtake in that section of the track, which means I'm slowly building up a little bit of a database in my head for where to defend if I should need it, and where to attack if I should need that too. I wasn't expecting to keep pace with literally anyone in this event, but I'm learning as I go, and first-hand experience is always going to be better than a hot lap. Now, with this guy so far ahead of me, I'm not sure if I'm going to catch up to him before the session actually ends, so now I'm going to lock in and try and set the fastest lap I can. In the last few laps, I made storming progress, with the lap after the overtake on Callum Races yielding a 39.227, the following lap with this fella in the blue suit graciously letting me through at the final corner, somehow managing to yield a 39.135, and just to really hammer it home, shout out to Vengent, my final lap was a 39.063. Tantalizingly close to a 38, but now I need to pull into the pits and see if that was enough to get me anywhere up in the grid.
No way!
To my disbelief, my father, watching me from the sidelines, was raising one finger, which can only mean one thing. I need to go and verify if this is true.
Hang on a second, I don't believe you. I don't believe you!
39 flat.
Did I?
39 flat.
Yes! Get in! No way on earth!
No, you were doing quite well around there.
I was so worried you were going to be battling the whole quality.
That's what I was worried about, but oh god, there's no way!
You two were having a right
Sorry for getting in your way.
It's alright. I had a little bit of a scrap with you. I tried down the inside here, it just didn't work out.
I knew I hadn't got a decent lap in, so I was like, I have to take this one.
Unbelievably, I had qualified pole in the Group A qualifying stage. I couldn't believe it, so I actually had to go and check on the screen to make sure that my dad wasn't lying. He wouldn't lie to me, but I was just in that much disbelief. However, there were still 2 more qualifying stages to go with 2 other groups, which meant that I was on the sidelines on absolute pins, pacing back and forth non-stop, waiting for the results to come in. Our dear friend Karting with Josh went out in qualifying Group C and came back pole in qualifying Group C. However, overall, he qualified 5th. which meant we got to troll him a little bit.
Come on! He was still quicker though, right? Yeah, of course he was, of course he was.
But after all the waiting around, and after all 3 qualifying groups had gone ahead, it was time for Group A to begin their pre-final race. I pulled out of the pits for my outlap and was faced with quite possibly one of the coolest sights I have ever seen while driving onto a go-kart grid. But now it's time to hit the grid. Fortunately, my grid spot being on the inside, I can hold my position off at the start. Let's see how this goes. And the lights go green, and let's go racing. Now, I have 2 advantages coming off of the line. 1, I'm on the inside grid slot. 2, that cone meant that no one was allowed to merge over to where I'm at prematurely, which meant that I had a pretty secure run directly out of the first corner. I knew for a fact that going defensive way too early is probably going to slow me down and just put me right in the clutches of Brad Philpot, who was gridded directly behind me. So I knew that all I needed to do was get a couple solid outlaps in and only really need to defend when things start getting hairy. However, I do have a benefit here, because whoever is in P3 is going to ruthlessly hound Philpot for his position. I would have his point of view in the video, but he didn't upload it to the Google Drive, and quite frankly, I'm too anxious to ask. Lap 4 now, and I come round this hairpin and notice just how much I'm starting to gap a fair bit of the field. Unfortunately, our dear friend Karting with Josh is having a bit of a struggle session down there, being caught in one hell of a fight while accidentally clipping a couple of cones. I think he accrued like a 15-second time penalty during this race, which is unfortunate. If you want his perspective of how the pre-final race went, you can find it on his YouTube channel, because to be honest with you, the pre-final was actually pretty uneventful for me, because I knew that I didn't have to defend, I have no offboard footage, and, well, it's kind of just me running away with it, but it is me absolutely cementing my position as pole on the grid in the next race, as long as I keep it clean and don't make any mistakes. And keep it clean I did. So clean that I'm actually struggling to find parts of this race I can commentate over. So what I'm going to show you is actually my fastest lap from this race, which was unfortunately about a 1/10 slower than my qualifying lap, but still fast enough to keep well in the lead. Because everyone in P2, P3, and below are all fighting each other, it meant that I effectively just ran away with this. I'm keeping my lines as tight as possible, although in the words of Brad Philpot himself, I probably could have used a bit more curb. I used a lot of curb coming through these corners here, and as I dart over this final curb in order to get to the main straight, I managed to set myself a rather paltry 39.142, which wasn't by any means the fastest lap of the race, but it was fast enough to keep me in the lead, and that is pretty much all that matters. The most productive use of my time right now is explaining just how I plan to be a pain in the arse in the next race. This corner here, I take a rather wide exit, but I know for a fact that you can get a run coming into this hairpin if you go on the inside. So what I plan to do is, I plan to make a tighter exit out of turn 2 to effectively block off any run whatsoever going towards the hairpin, and then just for good measure, hold center of the track in order to preserve speed while also preventing any opportunities inside and outside. This hairpin we're coming up to here is also another prime overtaking spot, but it's also got a very small margin of error. So I know if I hold a rather central line here as well, Brad Philpot is going to absolutely scuff his corner entry and maybe risk a penalty if he goes for a move there. This track is incredibly narrow, so me being on pole position is going to be my Excalibur. Because I'm used to these defensive drives against faster opponents by now, I know exactly what to do. And this session has been a rather fantastic learning opportunity in order to see exactly where I can put these defensive moves into practice. Let's round this out now with the final lap of the race, and I kind of scuffed my entry into that corner, but it only means that I just get a nice and tight entry into the tyre barrier corner at turn 2. So it kind of worked in my favour regardless. You'll notice that I'm giving these cones a massive wide berth, because I'm not planning on taking any risks here, because I have the perfect situation. I'm on pole position on a track easy to defend on, and I don't need to make any mistakes and clip cones that would send me tumbling down the order. So I give these cones a wide berth as far as I can, so that I can breeze across the line in a rather easy race victory. Doesn't stop me from celebrating it like I'm at a frat party though. Philpot pulls aside me here in order to show me a bit of respect, which was quite nice of him, but now let's just swing into the pits, have a chat with my dad, granddad, and Josh, and see how that race went from Josh's perspective, and get a grip of how I'm feeling as well. Nervous is the spoiler.
I'm going for the Group A finals, oh god!
Believe that.
Get there.
You managed to keep it? Oh, the first corner.
Yeah, I did.
You had to cope.
What?
You had to cope.
Did I? Oh, I had like 3.
Oh no! Mate, that was the only thing I was focusing on. Don't hit that cone.
Yeah, we've seen you.
Came through the corner at the back there, and I had to look back to make sure it hadn't been hit.
Swap the cart if you get Kart 8. It's got no top speed, so it's coming to you.
Oh my god. 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 Oh my god.
If you had told me when I woke up that morning that I would be on pole in a race against a bunch of championship level karters and a professional racing driver, I probably would have laughed in your face and then told you to get out of my hotel room. But alas, that is the exact situation I find myself in. I'm on pole for the Group A finals. So, I need to make sure that I continue to do exactly what I was doing and make sure that everything I've learned about the track comes to fruition. I know where to defend, I know what to do, and I know there are consequences for anyone who tries to do anything way too garish, shall we say. So, I get into my car for the final race, nervous as anything, drum and bass blasting in my ears to try and keep me focused and motivated, and I take my spot on the grid. This is what it boils down to. 23 more laps standing between me and, quite frankly, the biggest trophy I've ever seen. Let's do this. And the lights go green, and let's go racing. Now, I immediately dive to the apex of the first corner here because I know for a fact that no one is allowed to merge over to where I'm at until they pass the merging cone. So I know that I can immediately start blocking everybody off, and I keep a very central line coming towards that hairpin there. You'll notice my defensive moves coming into clutch in this race because I know for a fact that Brad Philpot is right behind me. And with a little bit of helmet touching going on with whoever was in P3, it means that those two aren't going to fight each other as much this time, so I can't just run away with it this time. Already you can tell my entries and exits through these hairpins as well are much, much tighter than they were before, and even when I'm on the main straight, I've cut directly to the middle of the track. I need to prevent any and all opportunities. The only opportunities I can even allow would be ones that would get Philpot into trouble and even penalize him further down the grid, which he doesn't want to do, and frankly, I don't want that for him either. Just because this is a defensive drive does not mean it is not riskless, because I know for a fact that I need to preserve as much pace as possible because what I'm doing is slowing me down. I get perilously close to the cones multiple times through these hairpins, but I know exactly where to put the kart in order to not hit them, so I should be okay. You might have noticed someone hanging a camera over the main straight right there. That is Callum Races, who very graciously recorded a lot of offboard footage for the finals. So I'm going to be borrowing a fair bit of that as an explanation of just how close Brad Philpot was to me this entire race. A few laps in, it effectively looked like this, with me leading the pack, Brad Philpot right on my tail, and Sean Curtis diligently following Brad, waiting for me to make a mistake so he could follow him through. However, I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that mistake never came. Even though Brad Philpot had a fantastic tow on me coming through this section here, it effectively meant that as soon as we got to this section here, as long as I held the center, there was nothing he could do to capitalize on it. He got closer and closer and closer until we were effectively bumper to bumper, and there was nothing he could do as long as I stayed steady and continued to hold these lines. Now, lap 9 played host to my fastest lap of the entire race, but that doesn't mean my other laps were slow because I have been consistently lapping in the low 39s up to this point. But whatever I did during this lap, even though I was on my defensive lines, it was enough to propel me 0.2 quicker into the high 38s. So I don't really know what to explain about what I did differently because from my point of view, it was exactly the same as every other lap. I did take a little bit more curb going through that winding section, and maybe my entry into these hairpins was slightly smoother than they had been before, even though my entry had been much, much tighter. But that's the interesting thing about 4-stroke rental karting. Sometimes the tightest line possible can be the fastest line. I'm not sure how, and I'm not qualified enough to explain it to you. Because I, right now, am sweating buckets trying to stay ahead of a professional racing driver, remember? After coming perilously close to hitting the cones on lap 11, let's have a quick check where exactly Brad is behind me. Ah, right, yeah, that's actually pretty close. Yeah, so he is still absolutely hounding my position, which means that this is still not going to be any form of cakewalk like the pre-finals were. I still take these hairpins a lot wider than the other ones for some reason, maybe because the tighter entry is causing a bit of understeer, or maybe I'm just being extra cautious in that specific part of the track. Yet nowhere else. I'm not thoroughly sure what the thought process was there, or maybe it was just bad racecraft. Either way, it's helping me stay ahead, whether that's the fault of the track or just, you know, what I need to be doing in this situation. On lap 15, this is the widest I have dared to take turn 2. I'm already glancing over to the right because I feel like I've accidentally given away the position right there, but fortunately I hadn't. But this is exactly how cautious I'm being. Even the slightest extension of how much wider I could have taken a corner could have been the difference between me handing the inside line away and keeping my position. By the closing stages of the race, this is how small the margin of error was. You can see me on my defensive line there, but Philpot decided to take a more traditional route, going on a wide entry and exit, which basically meant that he was on my bumper when we went through that corner. He attempted an inside move going through turn 1, but that obviously wasn't going to happen. I think he was just trying to apply pressure. But because I'm doing this whole pinching trick coming out of that corner, it effectively means that no run is even possible for him. Lap after lap after lap, I continue these exploits until we reach this, the final lap. Now, my exit of 2 this time, I take a slightly wider exit to try and carry more speed, but I'm straight over to the apex of this corner here, immediately blocking off any and all attempts. I am starting to get sloppy though, because the race has been going on for a long time, and well, with Philpot on my tail the entire time, it has really been a lot of pressure. I make a series of mistakes coming through these hairpins because I know that he is right there behind me, but I know that I'm on the final approach right here. I can see the marshal holding the flag as I come down the final straight. Yeah! 23 long laps in the lead later, and I had emerged victorious. Philpot pulls alongside me, shows me some more respect. He was a very respectful racer, but unbelievably, today, I have managed to defeat a professional racing driver and several championship-level karters. But let's not get too excited here. There are a plethora of reasons why I won this, but, well, we're best to discuss this when I get back into the pits and have a quick chat with everyone about how that went.
I did it!
Well, man.
I can't believe it!
What a buddy.
Oh my god.
All of that off-board in case your GoPro footage is boring of you leaving both races.
What, on a defensive line? How the f have I done that? I got into the 38s on a defensive line.
Alright, let's curtail the celebrations just a little bit, because there's actually several reasons why I won this race. Most of them I've already mentioned. There's 3 big ones, really. Only one of them was in my control, and that was starting pole for the race. The second reason is the fact that I weigh roughly the same as the sheet of paper my results were on. Yes, it's getting more and more difficult thinking of funny metaphors for this. And the third reason is that while South Coast Karting's refurb was a lot of fun to drive on, it is incredibly narrow, and with the addition of those cones on the apexes of the corners, it is incredibly difficult to make moves against anyone who is even trying to stay defensive. So, to answer the question, can an amateur karter defeat a professional racing driver? The answer is yes, provided he has every single advantage under the sun. Don't think I'm just going to sit here downplaying what I've done here though, because I am still immensely proud of myself. I can't actually believe that I've won this, because the combined talent of everybody on this grid far exceeds mine. And yes, while I weigh the same as a paper plane, yep, there's another one, that burst of pace I found in qualifying to net me the pole position effectively netted me the entire event. And I could only get there through, well, lots of practice with karting, especially this specific model of kart that I am deeply, deeply familiar with. So, I'm taking this as evidence of my strides of progress. Today, I went toe-to-toe against championship-level karters and a professional racing driver. And today, I won. Big thanks, of course, go to Brad Philpot for hosting this event. It was a lot of fun and well worth the trip. But a bigger thanks still go to my dad and granddad for travelling all the way to Bournemouth with me in order to make this possible. I was planning to come here when I passed my driving test, but alas, that didn't really work out. However, we still opted to stay in a hotel the night before so I could make it. And thank you all for watching. I'm sorry this video is as late as it is. Frankly, I've been suffering with a little bit of burnout lately. I'm actually off sick from work right now with stress because, well, it's honestly just all been absolutely mental, and I just needed a little bit of time to collect my head. But I'm feeling a little bit better now. I've got a fair bit of footage now, so I've got a lot of footage in the pocket to make a couple more videos with. The next video is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter one, but I just wanted to make a video about Team Sport Bournemouth because I happened to have the opportunity to visit that the day before I came to this track today. So stay tuned for that one if you want to see Team Sport Hairpin. I mean Bournemouth, sorry. Thank you all very much for watching. Until next time.